is just starting with his discourse. So, would you like to read 2.11?
Shri Bhagavan Vacha Ashocyan Anvashocastvam Tadnyavadanshcha Bhashase Gatasun Agatasunshcha Nanushocanti Panditaha.
So, Krishna is telling Arjun that you are grieving over those people who should not be grieved for. Like the learned. Wise men do not grieve over the living, over the dead, or the living. So, the statement he makes is that wise men do not sorrow over the dead or the living. Now, this is a very, very deep statement. People like us do grieve over the living, over the dead. We grieve over everything in life. Now, the question is this possible? So, today we are going to do about 15 to 16 shlokas. So, we have enough time to discuss these thoughts also. He's bringing in the Sankhya philosophy slowly, and he says that the wise men who've understood life, the one who's wise, he does not grieve. He does not grieve over anything. So, what is our thought on this? One, is it possible? What do we have to say? Have we reached a stage where we are in that state of balance where there is no grief or sorrow, where we can move from one situation of life to another? Last time, the example of Ram was given, that when Ram was asked to go to the exile, he simply said, okay. There was not a frown on his face, and he simply matted his hair and changed his clothes and went away to the forest. So, any comments on this?
My thought is that this verb that is used is anushocanti.
Yeah.
That means your mind sticks to it and you keep thinking about it.
Correct.
So at the moment you may feel grief.
Yeah.
So you may feel grief and that is all right.
Yeah.
But then don't dwell in that feeling.
Right.
That is what I gather from the Anushocanti.
Okay.
Anushocanti Pandita. That let your mind not stick to it.
Yeah. So there.
Similarly, the first word is Ashocyan, Anvashocastvam. That means there are certain things on which there is no point in grieving. By implication, it means that there are other things which deserve grieving. Which means that, but Anushochanti is your mind keeps going back to it. So that is what he's saying. There is no point in allowing your mind to dwell in that grief. That is the way I looked at it.
Yes, sir. Correct.
So I think there's a very valuable distinction that you just pointed out. Because grief is something that comes to us as human beings. But yes, exactly as you said, and perhaps as the shloka also says, that it should also come and go. It should not find a place in the chitta. That is probably what is important. I think your clarification, brings out really the not only correct meaning, but also a very pragmatic and a practical and a implementable meaning of this shloka, I feel.
True. So we had our teacher used to use these two words very often. Chareva iti, chareva iti. Keep moving, keep moving. He said the very first letters, the very first words in one of the Upanishads were chareva iti, chareva iti. So keep moving, keep moving. And here also Krishna says that the wise, the Pandita, the learned people, they don't grieve. So he says that we may speak words of wisdom, we may be very knowledgeable, we may have a lot of knowledge of the scriptures, we may know, we may quote them, but till you have not imbibed them, you've not understood them. He says the wise people, they simply don't grieve. They understand at that very moment that this is not a matter, that things have to be done. So it's not a borrowed wisdom. It's a wisdom which is imbibed and inculcated after long practice. So he says it means that the wise are silent. They simply do. They don't talk. Arjun has been talking so much. He says you've been using words of wisdom. But the wise people don't talk so much. They simply do it. So in other words, he's still telling him that how you tell a child कि अच्छे बच्चे ऐसे नहीं करते हैं. That means, you are not a good child as yet. You're not yet wise. Don't grieve. Move on in life. So, yes. So this is what Krishna is telling Arjun. So we go to the next verse.
Natvevahan jatunasan natvan neme janadhipaha nachayvana bhavishyamas sarve vayamata param.
Yeah. So he's telling him that you are grieving because you've not understood the fact that there was never a time when I was not, or when you or these kings whom you're going to fight with were not. Nor is it a fact that hereafter we shall all cease to be. So he's bringing in the philosophy that we are always going to be. He's bringing in the Sankhya philosophy of the Purush and the Prakriti, the Atma and the Srishti, that the Purush is always there. The Atma is Amar. It's always there. And this body which we have is going to die, which is the external thing. So he's now slowly going into the philosophy, and he's telling him that there was never a time when we were not there. Everybody is there. Now he's explaining how in the next verse.
Dehesmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatrana muhyati.
Yeah. So he's now telling him that just like boyhood, youth, and old age are attributed to the soul through this body, even so it attains another body. The wise man does not get deluded about this. So he says our bodies die and the soul takes up another body. So what is there to grieve over it? Now this is a philosophy which everybody knows. We'll not get into the deep Sankhya or anything. We'll not get into words. But this kind of a concept that man is not eternal, that the human body is not eternal, that the human body is perishable, that we are all going to die, from a very young age, everybody knows that. Correct? We know that. We know it, but we've not understood it deeply because we've never dwelt over it. Theoretically, everybody knows that everything is perishable in this material world. And slowly, as you grow older, you hear these words of Atma. People tell you, Atma Amar hai, that it's only the body that has died. And you yourself know that this body is separate from me, that I have a body. When I say ki मेरे शरीर में है. That means my body is something which I possess. I am not the body, but I have a body. I am not the mind, but I have a mind. My mind is disturbed. So when we speak of this terminology in simple words, we may not be educated, but we know these concepts. I have a mind. My mind is disturbed. मुझे अपने मन को ठीक करना है. So we know these things, but it's that we don't really dwell on them too much because we are too much in the material world. So he says that these are age-old concepts, that the body is going to perish. Sunil ji, आपको कुछ कहना है? You want to?
आप कीजिए। I just, हाँ।
Sorry.
मैं बस यही कह रहा था कि really that's the whole, in sum and substance, and that is the whole journey that one has to undertake.
Yeah.
You know, from identification with the gross, moving towards, you know, realizing the subtlety both within and without,
Right.
till you reach the ultimate, which is in a way nothingness.
Yeah.
But then that's all there is.
Correct.
So and that also, in a way, very vividly, you know, brings to us the fact that sometimes and very often, you know, people ask कि भाई इन सब चीज से क्या होता है? You know, study the scriptures, why study yoga, why study philosophy? So when we you know, stay on the grosser planes, our vision, our understanding is to that extent erroneous, right? Because our identity itself is shall we say, construed, right? Even if we are the body, at best, it's only one part of us. Even if we are, right? I mean, let's say we can't dissociate ourselves. I mean, in practical terms, yes, we are the body, but that's only a part of us, and certainly not the whole picture. And as like the you know, the parable of the elephant and the five blind men, the moment when we make decisions from the partial, we can be completely wrong.
Absolutely.
So therefore, I think as we deepen our you know, perception, our judgment becomes better, our decision making becomes more accurate, and therefore less misery in life.
True. So if you notice in every verse, in these next 2-3 verses, Krishna is going on saying, the wise do not grieve, the wise do not get deluded. So basically, as a person goes on reflecting over this, goes on contemplating over this, the picture gets more and more clearer. Now that can happen to any person, irrespective of where and what he is. He has the mind, and the mind goes on contemplating, thinking, and he comes to certain conclusions. Then he comes to the conclusion, okay, these things happen in life. It happens in everybody's life. I'm not the only one. Right? So now this leads us to the, so here comes the story of Kisa Gautami. She's a widow and she loses her only child. And then she goes to the Buddha. And the Buddha says, she tells him that you please revive my child. So he tells her, yes, I can do it. But before that, you have to go and get me some sesame seeds from any house in the village. But the condition is that there should be no death in that house, in that family. So she begins her search. And she doesn't, from morning to evening, she's hunting for a house where there has been no death. And then she comes back wiser to Buddha, not disheartened, but wiser. She comes back and she tells him, there is no family where there has been no death, and I accept the death of my child. And she becomes his disciple. So the wise who think, who know, or through experience, they come to that conclusion that this material world or this body is temporary. There is another very interesting anecdote in the Mahabharata where Yudhishthir meets a yaksha. So this yaksha is a spirit, and the yaksha tells him that Yudhishthir is very thirsty, and the yaksha tells him that this lake where you have come is mine, and you cannot drink it till you answer my question. So he's posing numerous questions, and one of the questions he's posing to Yudhishthir is, what is the wonder of life? So Yudhishthir says, day in and day out, people are dying. But yet, the people who are alive think they are eternal, that they are going to live forever. Isn't that a wonder? So Yudhishthir is telling him, isn't that a wonder? That is the wonder of life. So even a normal person who is immersed in the material life, even he knows that eventually I'm going to die, but he doesn't want to pay attention to it. And that is the reason for pain. That is the reason for Arjun's pain. Because he has not accepted these fundamental principles of life. And here in this Talks on the Gita, Vinoba Bhave says that these fundamental principles, Krishna starts his discourse with these fundamental principles. That the soul is imperishable, the body is perishable, and finally what comes out of these two things? We will slowly understand what comes out of these two things. But at the moment, in the next 20 verses, from 2.11 to 2.30, we are just going to dwell on these two fundamental truths of life, that the soul is imperishable and that the body is perishable. That's all. If we have imbibed these two fundamental truths, then we have understood life. And there is nothing to be done about it, except we have to repeat it, ponder over it, and imbibe it, understand it deeply. It's there for us to see. It's something very simple. It's there for us to see. So this is what Krishna is telling Arjun. So we go to the next verse. If there are any questions, you can please ask in between. We have enough time, and we will understand better if we reflect over every shloka and we come to our own personal conclusion.
Ashaji, I was just wondering
Yes.
that in such a situation, the Western mind would say that this is the law of nature.
Correct.
That we come, we take birth, we live, and we die.
Right.
But nowhere I find Krishna saying this is the law of nature. He's saying this is the law of the soul. I mean, it looks like that to me, that this is not, he's saying Dehinosmin. Dehin means Atma, isn't it?
Dehin means?
Atma, no? Dehin.
Dehin, yeah. Dehin means Atma.
Atma.
Body,
so, soul, yeah. So
yeah.
he's saying this is the law of the soul and not law of nature, which means the soul encompasses nature also, it looks like.
True. So he says Dehina, Dehin can also be the soul which has taken over a body, right? A soul.
Yep. Deha and Dehi. Deha is the body and Dehi is the one which occupies the body.
Yeah. So Dehin is one who's occupying the body, correct? So he is deluded because he's identifying with the body.
Correct.
Does that make sense? So Dehin, a word he uses, so he says the body, yeah, the soul which has taken over this body.
Yes.
Okay. So we go to the next one, sir.
Yeah. Matra sparshaastu kaunteya शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखदाः आगमापायिनो नित्यान् तान् तितिक्षस्व भारत.
Yeah. So he says all this is because of the senses and the objects. He is not, going deeper into it, but he's saying that these are the senses and these are the objects of the material world. And because we are in contact with them, all this is naturally going to happen. So you are expected to understand that all the objects are perishable and all the objects are going to give us pain. And why do they give us pain? Because they are transitory, they are fleeting, they are anitya. And so they are going to give you pain. Everything in this world is anitya, it's impermanent. And he's giving us a solution also, what is to be done in this very verse. He uses the word titikshva, titikshasva. Now, titiksha means enduring. Titiksha is a word which means bearing, enduring. But titiksha is not just simply bearing, it means a calm endurance, a very patient endurance. So he says this is going to happen in this world. The objects are there, you have the senses, all the time you're in contact with the world through your senses, and all these objects are going to die. Objects is the body also. The body is going to die. Everything you possess is going to die, is going to end. It's a kind of a death. And what do you have to do? You just have to bear it. So now, where are we slowly going? He's telling us that this Atma or this soul is imperishable. This body is perishable. And he's going to go on saying this. But does any thought come to our mind? Where is he leading us? So it's okay, we can discuss this at the end. If you'd like to answer now, or we can discuss it after 15 verses or maybe 20 verses. So, कुछ कहना है आपको सुनील जी? नहीं, okay. So he says, okay, so we'll go on to the next verse and then all this will become clearer. Where are we heading?
यं व्यथयन्त्येते पुरुषं पुरुषर्षभ समदुःखसुखं धीरं सोमृतत्वाय कल्पते.
So he is telling him, Arjun, the wise man to whom pain and pleasure are alike, who is not tormented by these contacts, only he becomes eligible for immortality. Now, who can understand this deep science of the soul? Only the person who is very calm, who lives in the material world, but who is not affected by the opposites. This world is full of opposites. There's going to be pleasure, there's going to be pain, there is going to be shade, there is going to be sunshine, there is going to be rain, there is going to be a storm, there is going to be sun. All these opposites are going to be there. Life is not going to be the same every day. There is pain, but a person goes on bearing the pain and then he becomes kind of immune to pain, or he just accepts it. So these are the daily experiences a man goes through. But the wise man slowly understands that this is all coming and going. And why should I get disturbed? In the family also he understands that maybe somebody is irritated with me. And tomorrow that person is going to be normal. And there are normal human beings who go through this process. They work on themselves, they understand themselves, they understand, okay, now I'm not in a good state, I just need to keep quiet, and after a bit my mind will be settled and then I will be able to function. A simple mechanism. Everybody finds his own mechanism and everybody learns to deal with life in his or her own way. So he says this man who is not tormented by these opposites, who slowly starts achieving a balanced outlook to life, who starts understanding that all this is temporary, then he becomes fit for higher study, to grasp the higher principles of life. Till then, he's caught up in this web. But when he starts thinking, when he uses his mind, then he starts thinking, what is this? Why is this pain coming? Why am I afflicted? And slowly then his mind leads him to further questions and further answers. such a man becomes eligible for immortality, or for higher study, or for understanding the highest truth of life. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry, please.
Huh. Yes, so that's all I have to say. Now, these are the whole verses, as I'm just going on repeatedly saying, they have to be reflected, they have to be contemplated upon. Because this is not something where the actual Gita is what the actual Gita is telling us. I mean, what the actual teaching is. These things have to be first just observed, thought about, contemplated, and then the next part starts. Now, what is the next part? We will come to it. But let us see what comes in our mind after reading all this. All right, so we'll begin with the next verse, verse 16.
नासतो विद्यते भावो नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तस्त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः.
Yeah. So he says that the unreal has no existence and the real never ceases to be. And the reality of both these has been perceived by the seers of truth. So he says that unreal, the unreal that the body, actually it has no existence. It's there for a bit, then it disappears. We see this process, but one body doesn't have a permanent existence. The bodies keep dying, they keep coming up, people are born, people die. So this is just an ever moving thing. It's not existing all the time. But the real is there. It never ceases to be. It's always there. It's existing at every minute, at every moment, at every shun. So he said, all this, the seers of truth, they have perceived this, they have understood this because they've seen it. They've seen it. We are living in that world where all this is there for us to see. It's not out of the world. It's there. We have a body, we have the senses which can see this, which can understand this. But the wise man has deeply understood this. He said this has been perceived uh, minutely and imbibed, ingrained, understood by the wise man. So,
Yeah.
now sorry.
Can I say something?
Yeah, just one more thing
No,
that,
please, please.
yeah, sorry, okay, sorry, just
No,
say what.
please go on. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, so he says that, no, I think, say, आपको जो बोलना है, I just lost the thought.
My apologies.
No worries. Something just came up and it just went away. Tell me.
Okay. Then so I just wanted to say, so here when we, the wise man, I
Yeah.
think he will obviously, I think wise man could be equated more with sthit prajna, which is which is to follow.
Sorry, the wise man?
Definition of who's a wise man
Yeah.
is in the world, everyday world. Often we understand the wise person to be one who knows a lot from a mental or intellectual point of view.
Correct.
Whereas in truth, clearly I feel the definition of wise person here is somebody who has realized this distinction between the perishable and the imperishable.
Right.
Through reflection, through contemplation, through meditation, through yoga.
Yeah. So academically knowing, studying, knowing the theoretical part, the academic understanding, now he's telling us to understand. But the real understanding, how will it come? How does the real understanding come? So one day there was a question to our teacher and he said something, समझदारी, मतलब understanding बढ़ाइए. So improve or increase your understanding. So the question was, how do we do it? How does one improve one's understanding or increase one's understanding? ये समझदारी कैसे बढ़ाए? So he said one line. छोड़ेंगे तो बढ़ेगी. छोड़ेंगे मतलब you start leaving things. just start leaving. These things are going to die. These things are going to be. These things are going to end. You just leave it. And then what do? So here comes in the crux of the Gita. I can't wait till those 20 more shlokas. So what do? You do what you're supposed to do. बाकी सब चीजों को छोड़ना है. So here he's saying that these things are going to happen in your life. The pain, the pleasure, the heat, the cold, the criticism, the appreciation, all the rain, the sunshine is going to happen in your life every day. But you have to endure them. This is a matter of it's going to happen. So the wise man goes on moving forward. Charavaiti. Like Sir said, he doesn't let it stick to him. He keeps moving. So this is what the wise man has understood. Through reflection, as Sunilji rightly pointed out, if your mind is of that kind, understood. It's not the brain which is here, studying the theory part. It's the mind. It's the mind which is higher than the brain, where you're absorbing things. You're not just studying, but you're absorbing and you've understood. Yes, this what I see is there in front of my eyes. Why am I not understanding? Okay, so we go to the next.
No, just one moment.
Yes, sir.
Ataji.
Yes.
Now he's saying that nasato vidyate bhavo.
Yeah.
That means that which is not true
Yes.
or real, that
Yeah.
which is not real does not exist.
Uh,
So the body is real or not real? Body exists.
The body is real, but it's temporary.
It's
It does
temporary.
exist. Yes, it does exist, but it doesn't have a permanent existence. This is what he means.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't have a permanent existence. This is how I would understand. It
Right.
is because in the next verse he's going to tell you that we'll have to study a few verses where we come to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
This question will be answered in one of the later shlokas. We are going to come to it today itself,
Okay.
right? And so
Yeah.
that will be clear.
I think, yeah, right. You are right. Yes.
Can I still take half a minute to just make a point?
Yes, please.
See, so I think this is, sir, the distinction you pointed out. The reality of the body or otherwise, or reality of the material world or otherwise, comes to us at every juncture. Right? So the way I look at it is that, all manifest like we have the 7 colors, the 7 musical notes, so all manifestation is in 7 dimensions. We have the 7 chakras. So these are all, you can say levels of awareness, grossness, subtlety, subtler, and so forth. Now, like Einstein's formula, no? E equals mc square. So there is mass. Yes, there is mass. You can't deny that there is mass. But yet, when we look at it through more sophisticated equipment, maybe electron microscope, you don't really see mass. You only see whirling energy. So is the body is real when looked through, a certain kind of instrument, which is your senses. When you look through more subtler means of cognition, it may not exist in that form. It exists as patterns of energy, right? Even more subtle, it may just exist as a field. Like a magnetic field has these little charges, right? And so on. So I think the only way to say it, body exists and yet does not exist. Looked at from one point of view, yes, it exists, but looked at from a higher perspective, it doesn't exist in that form. I mean, that's the way.
Yeah.
What is your take?
Just Sunilji, what you pointed out one very important aspect, and that is that body is also changing.
Yes.
It's not the same body which was there last moment.
Correct. Correct.
In that sense, I mean, that is an awareness that we take a different standpoint and we see differently.
Yes.
When you said that, the particle is also constantly changing.
Correct.
When you look at it through the microscope or whatever. So in the same way, if we were to look at the body through microscope, we would see that it is changing all the time,
Absolutely, sir.
isn't it?
Very
Is that
true.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So iron is also porous.
Yes.
Look at a piece of iron through a magnifying glass, it's porous. It is solid, but it appears solid, but it is porous if you look at it. So, yes, so that could be a good way to see it. Yeah. So, correct. So, when we go on dwelling on this, when we go on, thinking, contemplating, discussing, then we come to certain conclusions. But we don't stop at those conclusions, we go further. So, that further will come in the Gita. He's telling Arjun. Yes. So, sir, we'll go on to the next verse, please. 17.
Yes. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakashit kartumarhati.
Yeah. So he says, know that alone to be imperishable, which pervades this universe, for no one has the power to destroy this indestructible substance. So now he's telling you about the Atma or the Purusha, and he says that cannot be destroyed. So that is one fact which we just have to accept. Now we can't go on discussing this fact because somewhere the mind has to stop. And somewhere the mind has to accept. When you go on analyzing, you have to come to some conclusion. And you can't go on analyzing beyond that conclusion also. You have to stop somewhere. Right? So now this is one fact which he's giving us. So in one of the Upanishads, there's a dialogue between sage Yajnavalkya and Gargi.
Yes.
And then she's going on questioning him. And then in the end, he tells her that, Gargi, if you go on asking so many questions, your head will break into 100 fragments. There is a point where you have to stop. Otherwise, you will lose your mental balance. This is what he tells her. And then she accepts. And then she also announces that if anybody is going to ask him a question beyond go beyond a point, that questioner, that person who's asking the question will get humiliated. So there is a point where we have to stop. And there is a point where we have to accept. So he says, that is imperishable. And now in the next verse, we'll go to the next verse, sir.
Yeah. Antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmad yudhyasva bharata.
So he's telling him that all these bodies pertaining to the imperishable, indefinable, and eternal soul are spoken of as perishable. Therefore, Arjun, fight. He's telling him that all these bodies which we have, they are perishable. Now, slowly, he's bringing in the concept of action. So there are three things in this second chapter, which is the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, but all the fundamental principles have been given in this chapter. All the other chapters are going to go deeper into these principles itself. There is nothing beyond this. Just three things are there in the Bhagavad Gita. One, that the soul is imperishable, the body is perishable, and the third thing, we have to do our duty. That's all. And slowly, Krishna is going to lead Arjun to that point where he has to understand these two, and then after understanding, what do? You can't go on discussing. After understanding, you have to start acting. So then he will slowly bring him to that. So he's telling him, Arjun, so you fight. If there are no questions, we can go on, or anybody wants to say something, we can wait. So we can go on?
Okay.
Okay.
य एनं वेत्ति हन्तारं यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजानीतो नायं हन्ति न हन्यते.
Yeah. He says both of them are ignorant who consider the soul to be capable of killing and who takes it as killed. For in reality, Relling, he says, for in reality, the soul neither kills nor is killed. He says that if you think that I am killing, I am doing that, you are ignorant. He says anybody who thinks that they are getting killed or they are capable of killing, they are ignorant. So we can't take this too literally. We can't say, okay, so can I just go on killing because I am not killing? But what we have to understand is that this body is an instrument. We are born, we have been given this instrument, and through this instrument, what is it that we should be doing? Slowly, we are going to that idea.
Right.
That we have been given this body. This body has been given to us. It is an instrument. And what is it that we should do? So we go into this idea of Swadharma, which is different for every body and mind.
Right. Yeah. The
So,
very fine way of introducing the idea.
yeah. So
Yes.
he's slowly leading us to that thought. So we can't, at this point, there are people who have questioned us in the class. So, you see, this class was basically for non-Indians. So there was only the, explanation in this way. So the question was, so what? So that means he should go on killing. I can go on saying that I'm not killing. So very often this question has been come. So till you've not understood the full concept that the soul is there, the body is there, and what am I supposed to do with the body? What am I supposed to do in this life? My Swadharma. And then the whole attention shifts on the Swadharma. When I go on doing my duties, these fundamental principles get more and more deeper in me. I understand them even more deeply. It just becomes me. And then there is no question in my mind because I've understood. Okay.
I will not ask that Western question. Should I go on killing? But the question is now Arjun would say you are telling me to kill. So and the soul doesn't kill. Then who kills, or what kills, or how killing takes place? that question will come now, and then you'll have to introduce the dharma.
Dharma.
The concept of dharma.
Exactly. That's a very intelligent question, sir. You're
So
totally...
who kills?
Yes.
Or what kills?
Yes.
So it's like one. It's like children playing with toys. Since the other bodies are also instruments, and our body is also an instrument, it is one instrument interacting with another.
Right.
Right? But the central question remains as to who kills or why not kill. Right? So I think that first of all, that would be whether killing is arising out of. Is it something that arises out of your inner sense of so to say a being or duty? Is it your swadharma? And I think the other thing would be that since the fundamental journey is from the gross to the subtle to the ultimate, will this instrumental action aid this journey or thwart this journey?
Correct.
Will it help or will it hinder? I think that could be the, so to say, the choosing to deciding point. Anything that helps our journey to the subtlety is something that is to be done. Everything else being equal, we decide whether this is an enabler. Our growth is nothing but our deeper understanding, our more experiential awareness of the subtler aspects of being. So, just another marker in terms of whether something done is not to be done The question is, will it help awareness or will it hinder awareness? If it helps, everything else being equal, go ahead. If it hinders, everything else being equal, rather not do it.
So in short, whatever helps us, whatever aids us is our dharma.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
That's, yeah.
True.
So we will come to these same conclusions. Whatever aids our growth is my dharma. Okay, so we can move on, sir.
Can I just
Yes,
one
yes,
question?
please,
Yeah.
please.
Sunilji, now Kauravas are in front of me. Kauravas are identifying themselves with the instrument, that is the gross aspect.
Yes.
Their instrument considers them to be the controller or whatever you call it, and they are out to kill me. So they have identified themselves with the gross aspect of the body, and they are bent on destroying my body. Is that, and then you are telling me that I should not identify with my body and still fight. So it's a very interesting situation in that sense. If you look at it from the gross and subtle aspect, it's a very interesting situation to for Krishna to explain to Arjun, I would say.
In fact, sir, that's where I think conflict comes in only when two or the parties involved perceive their respective growth paths, right, in a slightly shall we say erroneous manner or something, because when something conditional in natural order, there's not bound to be any conflict. Existence is all one. But often the way we perceive our the what is growth for us can sometimes be different for different people, because our perception comes from where we are at the moment. When we are evolved, our perception will be different. When we are slightly more gross, as in the case of Kauravas, their perception, we can't say it's wrong. All we can say is that it is coming from a certain perspective which is narrow. Right? So, just to put this another way, when we are at the ground floor of a building, we do not somebody asks us, look, if there is a vehicle coming, we cannot say. We say, no, we can't see. But when you're on the roof of the building, you can see vehicles 10 kilometers away when we're heading. Right? So the reality is still that is where you are determines what you see. So we cannot say the Kauravas are wrong in their identification of dharma. Only from a point of view of natural order, maybe it doesn't seem to be right. Maybe they will automatically come to grief because they have misidentified their dharma. And as a matter of fact, that is another reason why Arjun must just simply do his thing. He is not responsible because Kauravas have apparently misidentified their Swadharma. They are bound to come to grief whether Arjun does something or does not do something. So in that sense, just a reinforcement of Krishna's message.
Yeah, so we can look at it from another way, as in, see, what the Kauravas do, whether they have identified with their body or whatever, it's their problem, right?
Yes.
The moment I'm concerned with myself, this journey, everybody's journey is one's own. I cannot live anybody else's journey. It's my Swadharma. The word used over here in this Bhagavad Gita, the very first word, when it comes to it, he says Swadharma when he's trying to explain. So Arjun sees that they have identified with their body, they are killing, but now Arjun is getting this knowledge through Krishna. So Arjun is a person who can see. So he says they have lost their mind. What is it that I should do? Should I allow myself to be killed? Should I protect myself? Is it my dharma or is it my dharma to get killed? Even in the jungle, when the lion is going to pounce on the deer does put up a fight and the deer is totally incapable. But he does struggle. He does try to free himself. Or does he just submit and say, okay, the oh Lord of the jungle, come and kill me? He doesn't do that.
Correct.
So
It is, I mean, Kauravas have brought me to the battleground.
yes,
We didn't choose to come to the battleground on our own.
right.
But they are forcing, they are driving us out
Yeah, so
from our land, and so
yeah,
therefore there is a battle.
right. So, sir, now we don't choose where we are born. We don't choose. I am just born. I am born in this family where the people are treading over me. So what am I supposed to do? They have brought me to it, but go back to your birth. Why were you born in that family? I did not choose. I am just put into it. So I have to do my dharma. Okay, they are my family members. They are not strangers. They have pushed me, but they are within my, periphery, circumference. I am like, they are there for me. I have to live in that surrounding. I cannot jump out of that surrounding. In life, it's very difficult to just, where you are born where you are. You can choose to get yourself out of that surrounding, but it doesn't happen all the time. So you see, we have to consider this whole thing in totality. We can't have a piecemeal outlook. The Kauravas have done this. These arguments don't have a basis. We have to understand it. I am born here. I have to fight this. I have to deal with it. And if I don't want to do it, then I should have gone away long time back. I should have just, there are people who leave the country. There are people who are still in this country. Well, now that is very individual. Then we will come back to that Swadharma point. Okay, I think only we three are having a discussion. Maybe the others can join in if they like. Okay, for the time being, I think we go on to the next verse. And then Mahendra ji, oh sorry, आपको कुछ बोलना है Mahendra ji?
Please. नहीं, please carry on.
Please continue. We are enjoying your discussion.
Okay, please do, yeah, participate whenever you feel the need.
Please.
Okay, so we go on to the next,
Okay.
please.
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
So he's going on talking about the soul now. He said the soul is never born. It doesn't die. It does not become on being born, for it is unborn, eternal, everlasting, primeval. Even though the body is slain, the soul is not. So he says it's never born. It's always there. And even if you think, it doesn't become on being born, means it doesn't, assume something. If you say it's born, it doesn't assume, it's always there. You can't question it. It's just there, eternal, everlasting, and primeval. It's always there from the beginning. So also we have to just take this. Krishna, Vyas has made Krishna say these words. Now, who's Krishna? Vyas made this figure of Krishna, who's God. So he's the ultimate. We have to believe him. We can't question him. We can't go beyond a certain point. Okay, he says that the soul is imperishable. So we take it as that. That's the beginning point. That's the starting point. From here, we move on. Okay, we can't go back beyond the starting point. So this is the starting point. The soul is eternal. And now we go to the next point. So next verse, please.
वेदा विनाशिनं नित्यं य एनम् अजम् अव्ययम् कथं स पुरुषः पार्थ कं घातयति हन्तिकम्.
Yeah. So he says, Arjun, the man who knows this soul to be imperishable, eternal, and free from birth and decay, how and whom will he cause to be killed? How and whom will... So he says that the person who's understood, he understands that this is just a duty. That wrong person has come. I am the policeman. I have to do my duty. This is my duty. He does not identify that awareness does not leave him even for a second. He simply has to do his duty. He may feel sad about it, but he has to do the job. Because again, it is for the greater good. Or we can just leave this shloka as it is and just understand that I have to believe that the soul is eternal and the body is temporal. That's all. So we can move on to the next shloka.
वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान्यन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि.
Yeah. So he says, like, just like a man, he sheds worn out garments and he takes on other new garments. So also the soul, he just casts off the worn out bodies and he enters into others that are new. So he's giving him the example. He said it's so simple. Just like you remove your clothes and wear new clothes, the soul also just throws away one body and takes up another body. That's a process of life. Now, what is there to grieve over it? So he's making it very simple. He's giving him a very simple example, which you can give anybody. How you remove your clothes. You just remove the body, get into another body. It's so simple. Yeah. So if you actually go deeper into it, it's actually very simple. But then the whole problem is we grieve over it because we identify it, because we are not doing our swadharma. Everything will come in the correct perspective if we do the proper action, if we do the action which is destined for us, which is my swadharma. If I do that correctly, all these concepts will become clearer, or I believe in these concepts at the very beginning because I have been told, like a child has been told by the parent, you have to do this. So the child simply does it. Then he may realize the futility or the advantage of that particular concept or that particular teaching later on in life. Now, as we've grown old, we do say, yeah, my father told me to do this, and now I understand the value. Maybe at that time I always grumbled. For example, my father never allowed me to sleep beyond sunrise. Since a child, I have never been allowed to get up after sunrise. I have to get up before sunrise. It was like, even in the summer holidays, whatever was the reason, the other children slept till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. We were never allowed in our family. But now you realize that was a good habit. At that time, we grumbled and we said, why? So you see, anything can be a starting point. You believe and then you function, or you understand yourself. Okay, so now he's telling him, look, just like you remove old clothes, the body will take it up. Now you believe him and then you start functioning, or you verify for yourself. But finally you will come to the same conclusion that it's true. Actually, the soul is just shedding out bodies. So the conclusion will be the same, whether you accept it or you verify it yourself. So these are certain laws.
I think it's very interesting. It's like one leads to the other, it's like chicken and egg.
Yes.
You do your swadharma, then your mind becomes clearer.
Yeah.
You enhance understanding. Your swadharma becomes even clearer.
Correct.
Then the mind becomes further clarity. So one feeds the other. So you just have to enter the cycle, and then you just automatically go on and on.
Correct. True. So we go on.
Yeah. नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः.
So he says this soul is incapable of being cut, being burnt by fire. It can't be dissolved by water. It is undryable by air. The soul is eternal, all-pervading, immovable, constant, and renewed. He's going to the basics of this material world. In this material world, we have space, we have air, we have fire, we have water, and we have earth. So these are the 5 elements, and the body is supposed to be made up of these 5 elements. Okay? So he says, but even if we don't know the elements, we don't know. Suppose we don't know them, but he's just explaining to him that this soul can't be cut, it can't be burnt by fire, it can't be dissolved by water, and it can't be affected by air, it can't be dried by air. It can't get wet, so obviously it can't get dry. So nothing affects this soul. Yes, the body does get wet, the body does get burnt, the body does get cut, the body does get dried. All this happens in the body. But the soul is distinct from the body, nothing happens to it. So even if you get a cut, you will say, my finger got a cut, or my leg got a cut, or my skin is cut. I am not cut. So I will give it medicine, I will apply the medicine. So this distinction does come about. My foot is hurting me, my finger is hurting me. So this, he's just bringing in some fundamental truths. That the body is separate from the soul. So again, we can just go into further discussion, or we can just go further into the actual teaching of the Gita. So we have to just accept these fundamental principles. The soul is imperishable, the body is perishable. So, okay, so we go on, sir.
Achedyoyam, adaihyoyam, akledyo, ashoshya evacha. Nitya sarvagata sthanur, achaloyam sanatanaha.
Yeah. So he's telling him that this soul is unmanifest. It is incomprehensible. It is spoken of as immutable. It doesn't change. Therefore, know it as such. Knowing it as such, you should not grieve. That this body will die eventually, but you know that. You already know that, Arjun, that this body is anyway going to die. So what is there to grieve? The soul is different. It's not going to change. It is unmanifest. You can't see it in a manifested form. You can't understand it. You can't describe it. So you finally just have to experience the soul. The ones who've experienced it, they cannot talk. You can't describe it. Because your body, your mind has a limitation. You cannot describe, you cannot break that limitation. The body is different. So you simply accept and you understand that the body is anyway going to die, that you can see. What do I have to prove to you in that? Right? Okay. Next verse.
Avyaktoyam, achintyoyam, avikaryoyam uchyate. Tasmadevam viditvainam nanushochitum arhasi.
Yeah. So same thing he's telling him, and Arjun, even if you think that the soul is constantly dying and constantly being born, if you think your body is the soul, then also you should not grieve, because that is also an accepted fact that it's going to be born and it is going to die. So when there is a fact, why should you grieve over a fact of something which is a fact? You can't change it. So that's what he's telling him. Next verse, sir.
Athachainan nityajatan nityam va manyase mritam. Tathapi tvam mahabaho naivam shochitum arhasi.
Yeah. So he says that in that case also, if you think that the soul is going to be born and it's going to die, in that case also death is certain for the born and rebirth is inevitable for the dead. You should not therefore grieve over the inevitable. So he's bringing in the concept of rebirth over here. In Hinduism, we have this concept of rebirth. There are some, sects who would not believe in rebirth. But he said, okay, even if you don't believe in rebirth, but you do believe that it is going to have an end, that the body is going to die, that the body is perishable, because you see this fact day in and day out in your family or in somebody's, in some other family. But it's a fact which you see, which you know. You cannot deny that. So what is there to grieve about it? So we can go on to the next verse.
जातस्य हि ध्रुवो मृत्युर् ध्रुवं जन्म मृतस्य च तस्माद् अपरिहार्येऽर्थे न त्वं शोचितुमर्हसि.
Yeah. So, so this shloka is an answer to your. Oh, sorry, no, not this one. Also, the next one. So he says, before birth, beings are not manifest to our human senses. On death, they return to the unmanifest again. They are manifest only in the interim between the birth and death. What occasion then for lamentation?
That is the next one, Ashaji.
So,
I have just read Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur.
oh, sorry, sir. So we just explained that, sir. That death is certain for the born, and rebirth is inevitable. So why should you lament over the inevitable? Why should you go there?
Right.
Finish that.
Right.
Sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Avyaktaadini bhutani vyakta madhyani bharata
Yeah.
avyakta nidhananyeva tatra ka paridevana.
Yeah. So he says that beings are born. Before I'm born, I was not in a manifest form. Now I'm born, you can see me. After I go away from this body, then again you can't see me. So beings are not manifest to our human senses in the beginning when they are born. On death, they become unmanifest again. They are manifest only in the interim period. I exist only for a certain time. And in that time also, I'm always changing. Then, so what is the question of grieving? So in all these verses, Krishna is just going on telling Arjun, why are you grieving? Why are you grieving over facts? It's going to happen. Things are going to break. Things are going to, perish. What is there to grieve? Why are you grieving? So it's 10, almost 10:10, almost 10:10. So we have 5 minutes. We can, discuss, or we can say anything if we like.
Yeah, those who have not spoken so far could kind of,
Yes, we
their
have 6 minutes. Mahendra ji, आपको कुछ कहना है?
It's a battlefield.
It's a battle.
War is imminent. An object of war is not to get the kingdom, but the dharma. When the goal is set, the war is for the dharma, then what becomes our duty? Now, that is what I think should be here, and which the Lord tries to give solutions. He has given certain fundamental principles. You have to accept that. No questions are that.
Correct.
The very simple it says the unreal has no existence and a reality cannot be denied at all. I was just going through that time, even in the material world, taking to a simple subject of science, my mind was going there. In the subjects like physics, we are being taught about the light. Lots of principle about light. It exists. There is no chapter on darkness. Now the darkness is never taught about. There are fundamental principles of light. The absence of light is darkness. Now I think that's what the physical concept of Lord wanted to say, that the unreal never exists. Wherever there is an absence of real, it is unreal, and we perceive. Now, teaching, the things can be given about other energies as well. We are being taught about in thermodynamics, say for heat. There are fundamental principles of heat. What is heat? Nobody tells cold. Laws of cold is not there. It is the absence of heat that the cold is being. Now, this reality or unreality concept helps us in managing the life. That's what I understand is postulates very good, the concepts very good. The duty always keeps on changing. Depends upon Desh Kala Patra, where what circumstances and who. Killing is very good in the battlefield, but may not be good at home. So that events change. So I think in this scenario where it was his duty to fight the war, Krishna gives some fundamental concepts so that the grief does not overtake Arjuna and he is not deviated from performing his duties. And that's what I think he's trying to motivate. Uh, Up till now, I think the subject is limited to this only. Let me see. I think it's further maybe elaborated in the later text.
True. Okay, so that's good. We have just 2 minutes, so I think what Mahendra Bhai summarized it very well. And what he said, we will discuss in the next verse, which we will do in the next class. So I guess we can leave it on this note and reflect over these fundamental principles of life in our own way, through the angle of physics, through the angle of a homemaker, through the angle of a teacher, through anything, through chemistry, through biology, through any area, through finance, anything, from any kind of mind, you can understand this concept and come to your own conclusion.
Yes.
So I think we can leave it on that note.
Yes.
Okay, now 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Ma'am.
Thank you.
एक और भी दे देना।
Yes, so let's start, friends. As usual, we will start this session again with the chantings of Tri Onkar. Request you all to sit with your spine erect, closed eyes, settle down and take 1 or 2 deep breaths. Inhale. Gently open your eyes. Thank you. Now we are going ahead. Last session. In the last session, we had done the 2 very important shlokas of this first chapter, that is shloka number 15 and 16, which is talking about the factors which will bring about downfall in the sadhana. And then there is another one which will uplift your sadhana, or you will be gaining excellence in the process of reaching yoga or becoming one with yoga. 15th one, Atyahara Prayashascha Prajalpo Nagarah. जी
Sorry to interrupt you.
हाँ
एक तो आपकी पिक्चर नहीं दिख रही।
You cannot see me still?
Now we can.
So I just closed it and switched it on again.
Acha. Sorry. The other thing was last session we had closed with a query that Bhupatkar sir had, and we thought we'll take it from the opening of this one. The one about.
That's why I'm going. That's why I'm going through that verse again.
Acha. Right.
We stopped the 16th one, which is the what you can say, the things which will bring or support the factors responsible for your success in yoga is the 16th one. So the moment we do this revision of the 2, again we can go ahead and have some discussion and proceed further. Atyaharaha prayascha prajalpo niyamagraha. Ati ahar, ati prayas, ati prajalpa, ati niyama. Over-exertion, overeating, over exertion, then talk too much, and ati niyama means severe austerity. Janasangascha, that is having contact with people, or you can say being in public contact too much. And then the last one was laulyam, that is fickleness of the mind. Ki chanchalta, you can take it that way. These were the 6 factors, or these are the 6 factors which will bring, downfall in a sadhana towards yoga. And when we have the other 6 factors which will lift ourselves in our sadhana is उत्साह, साहस, धैर्य, तत्वज्ञान. Utsaha, the enthusiasm, sahas, the courage. When we say dhairya, patience, perseverance, tvajnana, having a proper understanding of philosophy or the scriptures, and then nishchaya, that is determination, and at last he repeats the same thing which he is talking about in the downfall and ensuring to us that janasanga parityaga. When we say janasangha, we say contact with people, and parityaga, parityaga is nothing but abandoning it, get devoid out of it, usse alag ho jana. So it is very clear that during sadhana,